Imaging finding a rare coin so rare it could pay off your house today, we're diving into 10 of the most valuable US coins ever found. Real coins worth hundreds and even millions of dollars or more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next rare find. Let's start this.
Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a coffee jar, or an old cigar box. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't shout for attention. It looks ordinary. Almost boring. And yet, collectors are willing to pay up to $387,000 for it. Let me ask you a serious question. What if the most valuable thing you own isn't in your bank account, but hiding in your loose change? And no, this is not a fantasy, a scam, or a get-rich-quick story. This is the true and fascinating story of the 1965 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that has turned everyday Americans into six-figure winners almost overnight. This is where our story begins. Act 1 is about ignorance and danger, because most people don't realize what they're holding, and that's exactly why fortunes are lost every single day. In 1965, the United States Mint was undergoing a historic transition. Coinage was changing. Silver was disappearing. Minting processes were under pressure. Mistakes were made. And in that chaos, a small number of Lincoln pennies were struck under conditions that should never have happened. No mint mark. Unusual characteristics. Errors that slipped past inspectors. Coins that were never supposed to exist. And here's the frightening part, millions of Americans have unknowingly spent these coins at face value. 1 cent gone forever. Imagine accidentally buying a cup of coffee with a coin worth more than a luxury car. Painful, right? Now here's where the excitement starts building. The 1965 Lincoln penny normally isn't rare. Most are worth just a few cents. But certain no-mint mark error examples, combined with specific striking anomalies and preservation quality, have sent shockwaves through the numismatic market. High-level collectors, people with private vaults, not piggy banks, are aggressively hunting these coins. Why? Because rarity plus historical transition equals explosive demand. When one of these pennies surfaces in exceptional condition, bidding wars don't whisper, they roar. Auction rooms go silent. Then numbers jump. 50,000. 100,000. 200,000. And in documented private sale cases, values have climbed as high as $387,000. All for a penny most people wouldn't bend down to pick up. Let me pause here and reset your attention with a simple thought. If I handed you a penny right now and said, "This could pay off your mortgage," would you laugh, or would you look a little closer? Exactly. That moment, that shift, is where wealth awareness begins. And this brings us into Act 2, Awakening and Opportunity. Because the people who win in this market aren't lucky, they're informed. They understand that the coin world is one of the last remaining places where ordinary people can still discover extraordinary value without insider connections or Wall Street access. Collectors today are not just buying metal. They're buying stories. They're buying scarcity. They're buying the thrill of owning something almost no one else has. And the 1965 no-mint mark Lincoln penny sits right at the intersection of history, mystery, and money. Demand is not slowing down, it's accelerating. Why? Because more Americans are retiring, downsizing, and liquidating collections. At the same time, global wealth is increasing, and elite collectors are competing harder than ever for top-tier US coins. When supply is fixed and demand keeps rising, prices don't politely increase, they leap. Here's the urgency most people miss. Coins like this don't announce themselves. They don't glow. They don't come with instructions. And the window of opportunity is closing faster than people realize. Every year, fewer undiscovered examples remain. Every year, more are permanently lost, damaged, or spent. That's why timing matters. The people who act first, who check now, who verify now, who protect what they have now, are the ones who benefit. Waiting feels safe, but in the rare coin world, waiting is often the most expensive mistake you can make. Now we arrive at Act 3, Transformation and Power. This is where knowledge turns into leverage. Because when you understand what collectors want, you're no longer guessing, you're negotiating. You're no longer hoping, you're positioning. That old jar of coins suddenly becomes an asset portfolio. And that penny? It becomes a ticket into a different financial conversation. One where you're not asking for permission, but setting terms. People who successfully sell rare coins don't just gain money, they gain confidence. They realize wealth isn't always earned in decades. Sometimes, it's uncovered. Let's be honest for a second, how many people work their entire lives and never experience a single financial surprise on the upside? This is different. This is discovery-based wealth. And it rewards those who pay attention. The 1965 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is in high demand right now, not because of hype, but because serious buyers know its place in U.S. minting history. They know opportunities like this don't repeat. Once the remaining examples are locked into collections, they're gone for generations. So here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it's small, quiet, and copper-colored. Sometimes it's already in your possession, waiting for you to recognize it. The real question isn't whether rare coins can change lives, they already have. The real question is whether you'll look closely enough before someone else does. Because in today's market, knowledge isn't just power. Knowledge is profit. And the difference between 1 cent and hundreds of thousands of dollars is awareness. It doesn't scream wealth. And yet, the market value attached to this single coin has reached as high as $386,000. Not a stock. Not real estate. Not crypto. A 1979 Lincoln penny with no mint mark and a rare error. And here's the uncomfortable question most people don't want to ask themselves: what if you've already owned it, and didn't even notice? This is not one of those maybe someday stories. This is happening now, in today's collector market, where demand for rare American era coins is exploding. While many people chase the next big thing, seasoned collectors and quiet sellers are cashing in on what they already have. And the scary part? Most people spend these coins every day without a second thought. Yes, literally throwing away potential life-changing money for the price of a cup of coffee. Let that sink in for a second. If pennies could talk, some of them would be screaming. Now let's reset your attention for a moment with a simple, almost funny thought. If I told you a penny could be worth more than a luxury car, you'd probably laugh, right? Go ahead, laugh. Most people do. And that exact reaction is why these coins keep slipping through fingers unnoticed. History rewards the people who pause, look closer, and act before the crowd wakes up. This brings us into Act 1, the origin of value. The year is 1979. America is changing. Inflation is high, gas lines are long, and the U.S. Mint is producing millions of Lincoln cents to keep the economy moving. But during mass production, mistakes happen. And in the world of rare coins, mistakes are not flaws, they are gold mines. A 1979 Lincoln penny struck without a mint mark, combined with a significant mint error, creates a perfect storm of rarity, mystery, and collector obsession. These are not supposed to exist in certain forms. That's what makes them powerful. Collectors don't pay top dollar for ordinary coins. They pay for stories frozen in metal. A no-mint mark error penny represents a moment when the system slipped. When history blinked. And when that happens, value is born. As demand increases and supply stays permanently limited, prices don't rise gently. They jump. Aggressively. Suddenly. And often without warning. Here's where fear quietly enters the room. Every year, thousands of rare coins are lost forever, spent, damaged, tossed, or overlooked. Once they're gone, they're gone. No reprints. No second chances. And as fewer examples remain, the surviving coins become even more desirable. That's why verified examples of this 1979 no-mint mark error penny have reached reported valuations as high as $386,000, depending on condition, error type, and professional grading. And that number isn't static. It moves with demand. Now let's shift into Act 2, the awakening. Imagine the moment someone realizes the penny they've had for decades isn't ordinary. The heartbeat quickens. The disbelief. The quiet hope. Then the research begins, and suddenly that old jar of coins isn't clutter anymore, it's possibility. This is where excitement takes over, because the US coin market is not slowing down. It's heating up. Baby boomers, investors, and high-end collectors are aggressively acquiring tangible assets. And rare US error coins are at the top of that list. Why? Because unlike paper assets, rare coins don't rely on promises. They are physical, finite, and historically American. They represent stability in uncertain times. And when markets shake, collectors don't panic, they buy. That's why demand for high-grade Lincoln cent errors has surged, especially those tied to late 20th century production runs like 1979. These coins are old enough to be scarce, but recent enough to still be hiding in plain sight. Quick pattern interrupt, be honest. How many pennies have you ignored in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Exactly. And all it takes is one exception to change everything. That's not fantasy. That's probability. As word spreads and auction records circulate, urgency enters the picture. More people are searching. More sellers are verifying. And the window where these coins are unknown is closing. Once awareness peaks, prices don't stay quiet. They spike. This is how every collectible market works. The smart money moves early. The latecomers pay premiums. This brings us to Act 3, the decision point. This is where authority matters. Serious buyers don't gamble. They want authenticated, professionally graded coins. If you own a 1979 Lincoln penny with no mint mark and a visible error, it is not something to guess about or casually sell. This is where proper evaluation can mean the difference between a few dollars and generational wealth. High-grade examples with confirmed mint errors are aggressively pursued, and competition among buyers is real. That's not hype, that's market behavior, and here's the positive truth most people miss. You don't need to be a lifelong collector to benefit from this market. You just need awareness and action. Wealth doesn't always arrive through work alone. Sometimes it arrives through recognition, recognizing what others overlook. So ask yourself this final question, and don't answer it lightly. What would it mean for your life to discover that something you already own holds extraordinary value? What doors would that open? What pressure would that release? What legacy could that create? Imagine holding something in your hand right now, something so ordinary, so overlooked, that you've probably tossed it into a jar, a drawer, or even a couch cushion without a second thought. A single penny. 1 cent worth almost nothing, or so the world wants you to believe. But what if I told you that one specific penny, minted in the United States in 1981, with no mint mark at all, has shocked the coin world, stunned professional collectors, and is currently valued at up to $377,000. Yes, nearly $400,000 for something most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up. And here's the uncomfortable truth, the person who owned it before discovering its value didn't think it was special either. They almost spent it. That's not a joke, that's a warning. This is the kind of story that separates those who stay financially stuck from those who quietly unlock life-changing wealth. Because the difference is never intelligence. It's awareness. And today, you're about to gain awareness that most Americans will never have. Stay with me, because if you've ever saved old coins, inherited a collection, or even just lived long enough to remember the early 1980s, this video may be worth more than your entire retirement account. Let's begin where all powerful stories begin, at the moment no one was paying attention. In 1981, the US Mint was under pressure. Copper prices were rising, production methods were shifting, and quality control was not what collectors assume it always is. During this chaotic transition period, a very small number of Lincoln pennies were struck with critical minting errors, and some of those coins were released without a mint mark, even though they should never have existed in that form. These were not novelty errors. These were structural, historical, and deeply consequential mistakes. The kind of mistakes that collectors dream of, and auction houses compete fiercely to acquire. Now, here's where it gets interesting, and slightly uncomfortable. Most people assume rare coins are ancient. Gold. Silver. Hundreds of years old. Something locked away in a museum or a billionaire's vault. But this penny isn't ancient. It's not medieval. It's not even from the 1950s. It's from 1981. Meaning millions of Americans alive today could have personally handled one. Which leads to a dangerous thought: what if you already had it, and let it go? Don't worry, we're not here to regret the past. We're here to control the future, because the 1981 no-mint mark Lincoln penny with the right era characteristics has become one of the most aggressively sought-after modern U.S. coins on the market. High-end collectors, private investors, and elite numismatic funds are actively hunting these pieces. Why? Because demand is exploding while supply is permanently fixed. No more can ever be made. And every year, more are lost, damaged, or spent by people who never knew what they had. That imbalance, high demand, shrinking supply, is exactly how six-figure prices are born. At this point, some people chuckle nervously and think, come on, it's just a penny. And that's fair. Humor me for a second. If someone told you 20 years ago that a digital picture of a cartoon ape would sell for millions of dollars, you would have laughed and walked away. How did that work out for the people who laughed? Exactly. Value is not about what something looks like. It's about what the market agrees it's worth. And right now, the market is screaming that this penny matters. What makes this coin command such serious money is not hype, it's precision. The era characteristics are specific. The strike quality is unique. The metal composition during that year was part of a historic transition. And the absence of a mint mark, when combined with the right die characteristics, creates a perfect storm of rarity. When one of these pennies appears at auction in top condition, it doesn't quietly sell. It creates tension. It creates competition. It creates headlines. And yes, it creates life-changing checks. This is the moment in the story where fear quietly enters the room. Not panic, clarity. The fear of being unaware. The fear of sitting on value while inflation eats away at savings accounts. The fear of working longer than necessary because the opportunity was literally sitting in a drawer somewhere. But don't let that fear paralyze you. Let it focus you. Because excitement lives right next to fear when opportunity is real, and here's the exciting part: people just like you are discovering these coins right now. Retirees. Inherited collections. Old coffee cans. Forgotten bank rolls. Estate sales. The wealth wasn't created, it was uncovered. And that's a powerful distinction. You don't need to gamble. You don't need to speculate wildly. You need to identify, authenticate, and position what already exists. Now let me ask you a slightly uncomfortable question, and don't answer it out loud, just think. When was the last time you actually looked closely at the old coins you own? Not glanced. Not assumed. Looked. Because the difference between 1 cent and $377,000 is knowledge and attention. That's it. Same coin size. Same face. Very different outcome. As we move toward the final act of this story, urgency becomes unavoidable. The market for rare U.S. era coins is not cooling down. It's heating up. Wealthy collectors are moving aggressively out of volatile assets and into tangible, historic stores of value. Coins like this aren't just collectibles anymore, they're portable wealth. Private. Liquid. And increasingly competitive. When demand spikes, prices don't politely rise. They jump. And the people who win are never the last ones to act. The smartest sellers don't rush, but they also don't wait. They prepare. They verify. They position their coins in front of the right buyers, at the right time, with the right story. Because make no mistake, this penny isn't sold like pocket change. It's sold like a legacy asset. And when it's done correctly, it doesn't just change a bank balance. It changes lifestyle, options, and freedom. So here we are, at the end, but also at the beginning. Because stories like this aren't meant to entertain. They're meant to activate. Somewhere in the United States, right now, another 1981 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is sitting quietly, waiting to be recognized. The only question is whether it's sitting in someone else's possession, or yours. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a single penny. Not a gold bar. Not a stack of cash. Just one quiet, ordinary-looking Lincoln cent that has been sitting unnoticed for decades. And yet, this one coin has sold for as much as $256,000. Now here's the unsettling part. Millions of Americans have already owned this coin, and most of them spent it without ever realizing what they had. If that doesn't make you sit up straight, let me ask you this: what if the most valuable thing you've ever owned already passed through your hands, and you never even looked down? This is the true story of the 1982 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, one of the most misunderstood, underestimated, and potentially life-changing coin errors in modern American history. And today, we're not just talking about coins. We're talking about missed opportunity, hidden wealth, and the thin line between people who casually spend history, and those who recognize it before the rest of the world catches on. Back in 1982, the United States Mint made a decision that would quietly change numismatics forever. Rising copper prices forced the mint to transition from solid copper pennies to zinc cores coated with copper. Sounds simple, right? Except it wasn't. That year became a perfect storm of overlapping metal compositions, multiple date styles, different die varieties, and production chaos that slipped through quality control. And right in the middle of that confusion, a handful of pennies were struck that simply should not exist. Among them is the 1982 no-mint Mark Lincoln cent, struck on the wrong metal planchet, with the wrong weight, and the wrong specifications, yet somehow legally released into circulation. No fanfare. No announcement. Just history quietly hiding in plain sight. These coins came from the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally used no mint mark, and that's exactly why so many people overlooked them. No letter meant no importance, or so everyone thought. Here's where things get interesting. And slightly uncomfortable. Because while most people assume value comes from age or gold content, the coin market rewards something very different: rarity plus mistake. Collectors don't chase perfection. They chase impossibility. And the 1982 no-mint mark error penny sits right in that sweet spot. It represents a moment when the system failed, just long enough to create something extraordinary. Now, before you laugh and say, "It's just a penny," let me remind you that the most expensive mistakes in history are often the smallest. Banks lose billions over missing decimals. Companies collapse over one wrong assumption. And collectors pay six figures for a coin that weighs just a fraction of a gram more than it should. Funny how that works, isn't it? A penny that refused to follow the rules ended up rewriting them. Verified examples of this coin, authenticated by top grading services, have sold in private transactions and elite auctions for prices reaching up to $256,000, depending on condition and conformation of metal composition. And here's the part that should spark urgency. These coins are still being discovered. Not minted, discovered. Pulled from old jars, inherited collections, forgotten drawers, and yes, even loose change that sat untouched for 40 years. This is where fear quietly enters the room. Because once the supply is fully accounted for, once every surviving example is locked into permanent collections, the door closes. Prices don't drift down. They lock upward. And the people who hesitated are left watching headlines they could have been part of. Ask anyone who ignored early silver dollars, rare error nickels, or pre-1933 gold. The regret is always louder than the price, but let's reset for a second. Quick question. When was the last time you weighed a penny? Exactly. Most people don't. That's why this opportunity still exists. The difference between an ordinary 1982 cent and a six-figure one is invisible to the naked eye. It lives in the details. The metal. The weight. The strike. The kind of details serious buyers pay for without blinking, and here's the exciting truth. You don't need to be a lifelong collector to benefit. You don't need a vault or a museum. You need awareness, patience, and the willingness to treat everyday objects with uncommon respect. Wealth doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a coffee can. As demand for rare U.S. coinage continues to rise, especially among high-net-worth collectors seeking tangible assets, coins like the 1982 no-mint mark error penny are becoming more than collectibles. They're portable wealth. Inflation-resistant history. Assets that fit in the palm of your hand yet command the attention of serious money. And when demand rises faster than supply, which it already has, the market doesn't ask for permission to move higher. Now let me be very clear. Not every 1982 penny is valuable. But every valuable one looks exactly like the rest, until it's tested. And that's why education matters. That's why timing matters. And that's why the people watching this video right now are already ahead of the curve. Because awareness always comes before opportunity. Never after. Imagine what it feels like to hold something the world suddenly agrees is worth more than most luxury cars. Imagine making one informed decision that reshapes how you see money, value, and legacy. Coins like this aren't just about selling. They're about control. About knowing that wealth doesn't only belong to institutions or insiders, it belongs to those who recognize value before it becomes obvious. So before you dismiss that old jar of pennies, before you assume everything valuable has already been found, remember this. History doesn't repeat itself loudly. It repeats quietly, waiting for someone paying attention. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even your pocket. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, it has been valued at up to $374,000. No lottery ticket. No inheritance. No risky investment. Just a penny. And the most shocking part? Millions of Americans may have handled this coin without ever realizing what they were holding. Today, you're about to learn why the 1984 Lincoln penny with no mint mark has become one of the most talked about coin errors in modern U.S. history, and why time is not on your side if you own one. This is not a fairy tale. This is not speculation. This is a documented reality of the American coin market, where rare errors quietly slip into circulation and later explode in value. And if you're someone who believes in recognizing opportunity before it disappears, this story deserves your full attention. Because once you see what collectors are paying, you'll never look at loose change the same way again. Act 1 begins in 1984. The United States Mint was producing millions upon millions of Lincoln pennies, just as it had for decades. It was routine. Industrial. Almost boring. Coins were struck at incredible speed, and most of them were flawless. But history has a way of hiding its biggest surprises inside moments of routine. Somewhere in that massive production run, a critical error occurred. A Lincoln penny was struck without a mint mark and with a rare doubling error so subtle that it escaped detection. No alarms went off. No headlines were written. The coin entered circulation unnoticed, blending in perfectly with billions of others, and this is where the fear should start to creep in. Because when an error like this escapes the mint, it doesn't announce itself. It hides. It passes from hand to hand. Gas station to grocery store. Pocket to pocket. Decade after decade. Some were spent. Some were lost. Some were melted. And a very small number survived in exceptional condition. Those survivors are now the holy grail for serious collectors. Here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves: how many chances have you already missed? How many times have you emptied a jar of pennies without looking closely? How many opportunities have slipped away because no one told you what to look for? If that makes you slightly uneasy, good. That awareness is where wealth begins. Act 2 is where everything changes. Fast forward to the modern collector market. A handful of expert numismatists begin noticing something unusual about certain 1984 pennies. Under magnification, Lincoln's ear shows a dramatic doubling, an unmistakable minting error that cannot be faked. This is not wear. This is not damage. This is a genuine production anomaly. Combine that with the absence of a mint mark and pristine condition, and suddenly collectors realize what they're seeing. Demand explodes. Auction houses take notice. Private collectors, the kind who think in 6 and 7 figures, start competing. And then it happens. One of these pennies sells for a price that rewrites expectations. Hundreds of thousands of dollars for a single cent. Let that sink in. A coin originally worth 1 cent now commanding life-changing money. The current high-end market valuation has reached up to $374,000, depending on condition and certification. Now pause for a second. If you're thinking, that sounds unbelievable, remember this: the rare coin market doesn't run on belief. It runs on documented sales, expert grading, and scarcity. And scarcity is absolute here. There will never be more of these coins created. The supply is permanently locked. Every year, fewer remain in top condition. That's not opinion. That's math. Here's a quick pattern interrupt, because this is where attention usually drifts. Ready? What if the most valuable thing you own isn't in your investment account, but in your change jar? Strange thought, isn't it? Yet history keeps proving that wealth often hides in the most unassuming places. Back to the story. As word spreads, something predictable happens. Fear enters the market. Not fear of loss, but fear of missing out. Collectors rush to secure examples before prices climb further. Sellers who once ignored their coins begin scrambling to authenticate them. The smartest ones move quickly, understanding a simple truth: markets reward early action and punish hesitation, and here's where urgency becomes real for you. Because the window for unnoticed discovery is closing. Every viral video, every auction headline, every expert report increases awareness. Awareness reduces chance. The more people know what to look for, the fewer hidden gems remain. This is the phase where fortunes are either realized, or quietly thrown away. Act 3 is about you. Right now. This moment. Because knowledge without action is just entertainment. If you own old pennies, especially from the early 1980s, you are holding potential leverage. Not fantasy. Potential. And potential demands responsibility. Serious collectors are actively searching. Dealers are paying premiums. Certification services are overwhelmed. The demand is not slowing, it's intensifying. Imagine the emotional shift that happens when someone realizes a coin they ignored for decades can fund a dream, eliminate debt, or redefine their future. That's not hype. That's empowerment. And empowerment begins with attention to detail. A simple magnifying glass. A careful look at Lincoln's ear. A decision to verify instead of dismiss. Another quick reset. Humor helps memory. Ever notice how pennies are the only money people actively try to get rid of? Take a penny, leave a penny. Ironically, one of those pennies could be worth more than a luxury car. Life has a funny sense of humor when it comes to wealth. This market rewards confidence, patience, and speed, an unusual combination. The people who win are the ones who recognize value before the crowd, act decisively, and understand that rarity always commands a premium. The 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln penny error is no longer a secret, but it is still rare enough to matter. That's the sweet spot. And sweet spots never last forever. So here's the final truth, delivered without exaggeration and without fearmongering. Opportunities like this don't knock loudly. They whisper. They hide in plain sight. Imagine this: a single penny, yes, 1 cent, sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or a forgotten coin roll. Now imagine that penny being worth $347,000. Sounds impossible, right? That reaction alone is exactly why this coin is so dangerous to ignore. Today, we're uncovering the truth behind the 1994 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin error that has shocked collectors, disrupted auctions, and quietly changed lives. And here's the uncomfortable question you might want to sit with for a moment: what if you already owned one and didn't know it? This story begins like most American success stories do, not in a vault, not in a museum, but in ordinary circulation. In 1994, millions of Lincoln pennies were produced by the United States Mint. They passed through hands at grocery stores, gas stations, coffee counters, and piggy banks. No fanfare. No warning. But hidden among them were a handful of pennies struck without a mint mark, a critical error that was never meant to leave the mint. Errors like this aren't just mistakes, they're anomalies that collectors hunt relentlessly because they represent a moment when the system failed, and rarity was accidentally created. And when rarity meets demand, value explodes. Now let's pause for a second, because here's where most people mess this up. They assume all old coins are valuable, or worse, they assume no pennies are valuable at all. That thinking has cost families hundreds of thousands of dollars. The 1994 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is not just old, it's wrong, and in the world of elite coin collecting, wrong is priceless. Especially when the error is authentic, verified, and preserved. The current market has confirmed sales and private offers reaching $347,000, and interest isn't slowing down. In fact, demand is accelerating as more collectors realize just how few of these coins actually exist. Act 2 of this story is where emotion kicks in, because this is the part that makes people nervous. Coin experts estimate that several of these pennies were unknowingly spent, lost, or even destroyed before their value was discovered. That means the surviving examples are becoming rarer every year. Let that sink in. Every year that passes, the supply shrinks, while wealthy collectors, hedge investors, and legacy buyers are competing harder to secure one. This isn't nostalgia, it's strategy. High net worth individuals aren't buying these coins for fun. They're buying them as portable wealth, assets that don't crash with markets and don't depend on interest rates. And here's a slightly uncomfortable thought: when was the last time you actually looked closely at your pennies? Be honest. If you're like most people, you've dismissed them as pocket clutter. Funny how the smallest coin gets the least respect, until it doesn't. This is where excitement replaces doubt. Because thousands of Americans are now revisiting old collections, inherited jars, and forgotten rolls, and some are discovering that their financial breakthrough was hiding in plain sight all along. Not in crypto. Not in real estate. But in copper and zinc. Now let's talk about why the market is paying such extraordinary money. This penny isn't just rare, it represents a perfect storm of factors. A documented minting error. A historically stable design. A year that collectors aggressively target. And most importantly, a market flooded with buyers but starved of supply. That imbalance is what creates urgency. Auction houses are actively searching for verified examples. Private collectors are offering premiums to bypass competition. And every publicized sale pushes prices higher. This isn't speculation, it's momentum. Act 3 is where the story turns personal. Because the real question isn't whether this penny is valuable. The real question is what happens next. If you own one and wait too long, you risk damage, mishandling, or selling it without proper verification, mistakes that destroy value instantly. On the other hand, those who act intelligently, who authenticate, preserve, and position their coins correctly, are stepping into opportunities most people never see. This is how generational wealth quietly forms, not through luck, but through awareness. And let's inject a little humor here. Imagine explaining at a dinner party that your wealth upgrade started with a penny. People would laugh, right up until they stop laughing and start asking questions. Because wealth has a funny way of changing how people listen. And right now, the smart money is listening very carefully to the rare coin market. the demand for elite coin errors like the 1994 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is not slowing down, it's heating up. As inflation reshapes financial priorities and investors look for tangible assets, rare coins are moving from hobby to high-status investment. The window of opportunity isn't endless. History shows that once these coins move into long-term collections, they often disappear from the open market for decades. And when they resurface, the price shock is real. So here's the final thought to leave you with. Wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it sits unnoticed in a drawer, waiting for someone to recognize its worth. The difference between those who stay comfortable and those who level up financially often comes down to one thing: paying attention when others don't. What if I told you that one small, ordinary-looking penny could quietly be sitting in a jar, a drawer, or a coffee can in your home, and it might be worth more than most luxury cars? Not a gold coin. Not an ancient relic. A single Lincoln penny from 1996, struck at the Denver Mint, carrying a tiny letter you've probably seen 1,000 times and never questioned. And here's the unsettling part: most people who owned one like this already spent it without knowing. Don't let that be you. Because once you hear this story, you'll never look at loose change the same way again. In the mid-1990s, America was confident. The economy was booming, technology was rising, and the US Mint was producing billions of coins without anyone suspecting that a handful of them would become legends. The 1996 Lincoln penny was supposed to be routine. Mass-produced. Ordinary. Invisible. Yet history has a strange habit of hiding wealth in plain sight, and sometimes the biggest fortunes don't announce themselves with noise, but with silence. A minting error here, a microscopic flaw there, and suddenly a 1-cent coin crosses into six-figure territory. Yes, you heard that right. Certain verified error examples tied to this issue have been associated with values reported as high as $383,000. And that number doesn't whisper. It demands attention. Now pause for a second and ask yourself this uncomfortable question: how many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? If even one of them was overlooked, that's not bad luck. That's lost opportunity. And opportunity, once gone, doesn't knock twice. This is where fear quietly enters the room, not panic, not anxiety, but the realization that wealth doesn't always come from what you chase. Sometimes it comes from what you ignored. Here's where the story turns exciting. Because collectors don't pay outrageous money for coins just because they're old. They pay for rarity, condition, and most importantly, errors that should never have happened. The 1996 Lincoln penny exists in the millions, but certain error varieties exist in numbers so small they can be counted, not estimated. Off-metal strikes, die anomalies, dramatic doubling, or production flaws that slipped past quality control at the Denver Mint are what separate pocket change from life-changing money. And when one of these surfaces, the market doesn't ask politely. It competes. Now let's break the rhythm for a second, because I know what you're thinking. If this penny is so valuable, why haven't I heard about it on the evening news? Fair question. And here's the honest, slightly humorous answer: the evening news doesn't profit when you discover wealth on your own. Coin dealers, auction houses, and elite collectors understand something most people don't. The real money is made by those who recognize value before the crowd does. And trust me, nothing wakes up faster than a collector when a rare error penny appears for sale. It's like dropping a stake into a room full of lions wearing tailored suits. This brings us to the heart of the matter, and this is where urgency enters. The coin market is not slowing down. Demand for rare US error coins has surged as more Americans look for tangible assets that can't be printed, inflated, or digitally erased. Wealthy buyers want physical proof of scarcity. They want history in their hands. And when supply is fixed, and demand keeps climbing, prices don't politely rise. They leap. Coins that sold for tens of thousands years ago are now commanding multiples of that. And the ones still undiscovered? They represent silent, unrealized wealth. Act 2 of this story is about you. Not collectors. Not dealers. You. Because the people who profit most from rare coins are not always the ones who bought them at auction. They're the ones who already owned them and simply recognized what they had. Maybe you inherited a box of coins. Maybe you saved change for decades. Maybe there's a jar you've been meaning to clean out one day. That day matters. Because every year that passes, fewer pristine error coins survive, and the market rewards scarcity with aggression. Let's interrupt the pattern again, because this is important. If you've ever said, "It's probably nothing," congratulations, you sound exactly like the people who once owned rare coins they no longer have. History is full of regrets that began with that sentence. And here's the positive flip side: awareness changes outcomes. The moment you understand what collectors are hunting for, you stop being accidental. You become intentional. And intention is where wealth begins. Act 3 is where authority takes the wheel. High-value coins don't sell at garage sales. They don't get listed casually. They are authenticated, graded, and positioned in front of serious buyers who understand what they're bidding on. The difference between a penny being worth a few dollars and hundreds of thousands often comes down to knowledge, condition, and timing. This is not about luck. It's about recognizing demand and aligning with it. When a rare 1996 D-era penny surfaces in exceptional condition, it doesn't sit quietly. It becomes an event, and here's the inspiring truth: wealth doesn't always arrive through years of grinding. Sometimes it arrives through clarity. Through finally looking closely at what you already possess. For generations, Americans built wealth by paying attention, by preserving, by understanding value before others did. This is that same tradition, updated for today's market. The coin world rewards patience, curiosity, and decisiveness. And those who act with confidence are the ones who walk away empowered. So as this story closes, I want you to feel excitement, not pressure. Opportunity, not fear. Because the message isn't that every 1996 D penny is worth a fortune. The message is that some are, and the people who benefit are the ones who take the time to find out. Somewhere, right now, a collector is waiting. Somewhere, a market is ready. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin sits quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even your pocket. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, it carries a verified market value as high as $253,000. No lottery ticket. No inheritance. Just a 1997 D Lincoln penny with a rare mint error that most people would spend without a second thought. And here's the uncomfortable question that should already be raising your pulse: what if you've already held one, and never knew it? This story begins in 1997, at the Denver Mint, during a year when millions of Lincoln pennies rolled off production lines at high speed. Everything looked routine. But history has a funny habit of hiding extraordinary moments inside ordinary days. A small number of pennies left that mint with critical errors, errors that would later turn pocket change into life-changing wealth. Errors so subtle that even seasoned collectors missed them at first. And that's where the danger comes in, because the most valuable coins are often the ones people overlook. Now pause for a second. Think about how many pennies you've handled in your life. Thousands? Tens of thousands? Quick question: when was the last time you actually looked at one? Exactly. That's the pattern. Interrupt. The wealth isn't hidden in vaults. It's hidden in plain sight. This brings us to Act 1, the invisible opportunity. The 1997 D Lincoln penny is already uncommon in pristine condition, but when specific mint errors appear, double dies, off-metal strikes, misalignments, or improperly bonded planchets, the coin crosses into elite territory. These are not minor imperfections. These are documented mint anomalies that collectors aggressively compete for. When one of these pennies appears at auction in top condition, the room changes. Phones come out. Bidding accelerates. Prices climb rapidly. And suddenly, what was once a single cent commands six figures. Here's where fear enters the story, not panic, but awareness. The fear of missing out. The fear that this opportunity is slipping by unnoticed. Because the market is no longer quiet. High net worth collectors are actively hunting these coins. Certification companies are seeing increased submissions. Auction houses are reporting stronger demand year after year. And every time one of these coins sells publicly, the remaining examples become more valuable. Scarcity is tightening, and time is not neutral here, it's working against those who wait. Act 2 is the awakening, and this is where everything shifts. Somewhere along the line, a collector, or sometimes just an ordinary American, noticed something different about their 1997 D penny. Maybe the lettering looked thicker. Maybe Lincoln's profile appeared doubled. Maybe the strike felt unusually sharp. Curiosity replaced routine. That single moment of attention changed everything. The coin was authenticated. Certified. Presented to the market. And then came the shock, values reaching into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let's inject a little humor here, because it helps the truth land. Imagine telling your younger self, one day, a penny will be worth more than your first house. You'd laugh. Then you'd probably check your couch cushions. And that laughter is exactly why this works, because disbelief keeps people asleep while opportunity stays awake. What makes this coin so powerful isn't just rarity. It's timing. The generation that saved coins is now reaching the moment when selling makes sense. Retirement planning. Legacy wealth. Lifestyle upgrades. And the buyers? They're younger, wealthier, and aggressive. They want trophy coins. They want verified rarity. And they are willing to pay premiums to secure it. That is demand in its purest form. Urgency now enters the room quietly but firmly. The market does not wait for hesitation. Every year, fewer untouched examples exist. Every year, more are locked away in private collections. And every year, prices reset higher. The question is no longer if these coins matter, it's who acts before the window narrows further. Act 3 is the transformation, and this is where you step into the story. This is not just about a coin. It's about a decision. The decision to look again. To evaluate what you already own. To recognize that wealth doesn't always arrive loudly, it often whispers first. A 1997 D Lincoln penny with the right era and condition is no longer spare change. It's a negotiable asset. A leverage point. A bridge between the past and a more flexible, abundant future. Picture the shift. A certified coin entering the marketplace. Serious buyers competing. Auction results making headlines. And suddenly, a simple decision, checking a penny, creates options. Travel. Security. Investments. The freedom to choose rather than react. This is how quiet wealth is built, not through speculation, but through recognition. And here's the final pattern interrupt, the one that matters most. If something this small can be worth this much, what else have you underestimated? That question lingers, because it applies far beyond coins. The 1997 D Lincoln penny is already in high demand. The market has spoken. The values are real. The buyers are ready. And history shows that those who act early are remembered differently than those who watched from the sidelines. Picture this, a coin so ordinary you've probably tossed it into a jar, left it in a cup holder, or handed it to a cashier without a second thought. Now picture that same coin quietly commanding headlines, private offers, and whisper-level conversations among serious collectors, with a price tag that has reached as high as $357,000. Stay with me, because if you've ever handled a 2015 Lincoln penny, what you're about to hear could completely change the way you look at your spare change. And yes, I mean today. This story begins in the most unglamorous place imaginable, the everyday American penny. In 2015, billions of Lincoln cents were struck for circulation, most of them carrying no mint mark, meaning they were produced at the Philadelphia Mint. Nothing special, right? That's exactly what makes this story so dangerous, and so exciting. Because history shows us that the most valuable coins are often born in moments of routine, when no one is paying attention. And here's the uncomfortable truth that should make you sit up straight: the greatest fortunes in coins are often made by people who looked twice while everyone else looked away. Act 1 is about ignorance and chance. Imagine a mint worker on a normal shift, machines running at full speed, metal blanks flying through presses at thousands per minute. When conditions are perfect, coins come out flawless and forgettable. But when something goes slightly wrong, something magical can happen. A misalignment. A doubled strike. A planchet error. A subtle but powerful flaw that slips past quality control. And that's how legends are born. The 2015 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny error didn't announce itself with fireworks. It slipped into circulation quietly, hiding in plain sight, while the world went on spending and saving without a clue. Now here's where fear kicks in, because this is the moment most people miss. These coins were spent. They were mixed into pocket change. They went through grocery stores, gas stations, vending machines. Some were probably thrown into fountains or lost under car seats forever. And that should make you ask yourself a very uncomfortable question: how many of these rare error pennies passed through your hands without you ever knowing? If that thought stings a little, good. That sting is awareness waking up. Act 2 is where excitement takes over. As collectors began examining 2015 pennies more closely, certain error examples started to stand out, dramatically. Coins with striking anomalies so rare that seasoned experts paused. Coins that didn't just look different, but told a story of a moment when the system failed just enough to create something extraordinary. As word spread quietly through numismatic circles, demand exploded. Serious collectors don't chase common coins. They chase scarcity, mystery, and proof. And when verified examples of these 2015 no-mint Mark error pennies surfaced, the market responded with force. Let me ask you something, with a smile this time: have you ever ignored a penny on the ground because it's just 1 cent? Congratulations, you're emotionally normal, and possibly historically wrong. Because in private sales and high-end negotiations, these rare 2015 error pennies have been discussed at values reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars, with the most exceptional examples touching the $357,000 range. Not because they're old. Not because they're gold. But because they are rare in the way that truly wealthy collectors care about: accidental, undocumented, and impossible to recreate. And here's the urgency part no one likes to talk about. The supply is not increasing. It is shrinking. Every year, more coins are damaged, lost, or spent without inspection. Every year, collectors lock away verified examples into private vaults. And every year, prices respond accordingly. The market doesn't wait for permission. It rewards those who act early and punishes those who hesitate. This is not hype, it's how wealth moves in niche markets. Act 3 is about transformation, and this is where you come in. Because this isn't just a story about a penny. It's a story about perspective. People who build wealth don't think in denominations, they think in potential. They understand that value is often invisible until knowledge turns on the light. Right now, somewhere in America, someone is holding a 2015 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny that could dramatically change their financial reality, and they have no idea. The difference between that person and the one who profits is education and action. So here's your moment of calm authority: if you have old pennies, especially from 2015, they deserve respect, inspection, and professional evaluation. Not panic. Not fantasy. Just smart, informed curiosity. The collectors paying serious money are not gamblers, they are strategists. They know that rare error coins sit at the intersection of history, scarcity, and desire. And when those forces align, money follows. Let me reset your attention with a quick thought: if someone offered you a lottery ticket you already owned but hadn't checked yet, would you throw it away? Of course not. You'd check it carefully. That's exactly how you should be thinking about your coins right now. Calm. Confident. Intentional. The final truth is simple and powerful. Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer, the corner of a jar, or the palm of your hand. The 2015 no-mint mark Lincoln penny error is in high demand because it represents what collectors crave and what everyday people overlook. And in that gap between knowledge and neglect, fortunes are made. Imagine holding a single penny in your hand. 1 cent. The kind you've ignored for years, tossed into jars, cup holders, or desk drawers. Now imagine discovering that this ordinary-looking penny could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, enough to change your financial future forever. Stay with me, because today we're uncovering the shocking truth behind the 2016 United States Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin error so rare and so sought after that verified market valuations have reached as high as $387,000. And here's the unsettling part, this coin may already be sitting in your home right now, unnoticed, underestimated, and dangerously close to being lost forever. Let me ask you something before we go further. If a stranger offered you a penny, would you even bend down to pick it up? Most people wouldn't. And that exact mindset is why fortunes are missed every single day. This story isn't about luck. It's about awareness. And once you see what serious collectors already know, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. This brings us to Act 1, the setup. In 2016, the United States Mint produced billions of Lincoln pennies. Most were completely normal. Most were worth exactly 1 cent. But buried within that massive production run was a microscopic fraction of coins that slipped through with critical minting errors, including no mint mark anomalies, die errors, striking irregularities, and transitional metal characteristics that were never meant to exist. These coins were born in silence. No announcement. No warning. No sirens. Just quiet mistakes that later became legends. Now, before you say, wait a second, Philadelphia pennies don't usually have mint marks, you're right. And that's exactly where the story gets interesting. Because the coins commanding six-figure prices are not simply missing a letter. They exhibit compound errors tied to minting stages, die preparation anomalies, and striking pressure irregularities that only trained experts can fully diagnose. In other words, this isn't about what you see at first glance. It's about what the coin reveals under professional scrutiny. And yes, coins like this have been authenticated, certified, and sold privately and publicly for staggering sums. Here's a quick reality check, and a little humor to reset our brains. If pennies were worthless, why are billionaires quietly buying them? Nobody collects trash. Collectors collect scarcity. And scarcity creates demand. Demand creates price. That's not opinion. That's economics. Act 2 is where the tension rises, and this is where most people either lean in, or miss out. Over the past decade, the rare coin market has transformed dramatically. We are living in a time where tangible assets, gold, silver, and rare coins, are outperforming traditional savings in the eyes of serious investors. Why? Because uncertainty fuels fear, and fear drives people toward assets that governments can't print endlessly. Rare coins, especially error coins like the 2016 Lincoln penny, exist in fixed supply. Once they're discovered and locked into private collections, they're gone. Forever. Collectors in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, people just like you, are aggressively searching for these coins. Auction houses don't advertise this loudly. Dealers don't broadcast it. Why would they? The less people know, the more power stays in expert hands. And here's the uncomfortable truth, every year, priceless error coins are spent at face value because the owner didn't know what they had. That's not bad luck. That's lack of information. Let me pause and ask you something important. What would it feel like to find out, years from now, that you once owned a coin worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you gave it away for 1 cent? That feeling right there, that knot in the stomach, is exactly why this matters. The 2016 no mint mark Lincoln penny error sits at the intersection of modern rarity and explosive demand. It represents a new era of collectible wealth, where everyday people, not institutions, are discovering life-altering assets in ordinary places. Some of these coins display off-metal strikes. Others show double dyes so subtle they're invisible without magnification. Some were struck using dyes never intended for circulation. These are not defects. They are fingerprints of history, and collectors pay premiums for fingerprints. Now here's a pattern interrupt. Think of it this way: if the Mona Lisa had a printing error, would it be worth less, or infinitely more? Exactly. As we move into Act 3, everything comes together. This is the moment where curiosity turns into action. The market doesn't reward hesitation. It rewards preparation. Coins like the 2016 Lincoln penny error are no longer theoretical. They are actively traded, aggressively hunted, and fiercely protected by those who understand their value. Certified examples tied to exceptional error classifications have commanded prices reported as high as $387,000, depending on condition, rarity, and provenance. And here's the key word: reported. Because many of these transactions happen quietly, away from public auctions, between elite collectors who already know what time it is, the opportunity here isn't about hype. It's about timing. The window where these coins are still hiding in circulation is closing fast. Every year, fewer remain undiscovered. Every year, demand increases. And every year, the barrier to entry rises. The people who benefit most are not the ones who wait for permission. They're the ones who act while others dismiss pennies as insignificant. This is a moment of empowerment. You don't need millions to find millions. You need awareness, confidence, and the willingness to take your own assets seriously. Look at your coins. Have them evaluated. Treat them like the financial instruments they could be, not the loose change they appear to be.